All right, so good evening to everybody, and thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules and your family time to join us tonight. The purpose of this virtual town hall is to discuss a new capital improvement bond proposal that will be placed on the ballot for the upcoming annual May 18th budget and trustee vote. The agenda for tonight is pretty simple. First, you'll hear two brief presentations, one from Russ Davidson from KG&D Architects, who will provide a brief overview of the scope and design proposal for this bond. And then you'll hear a brief presentation from the Assistant Superintendent for Business, Lee Liu, on the overall finances of this proposed bond. Now, both of these presentations have been presented quite a few times already in our board meetings and workshops, and it's available on our YouTube channel. It's available on our website, but we felt it was still a good idea to do it again for those who are joining us that haven't seen those presentations, or even for those that have and just want to recap. It's a good way to frame the discussion. And the second part of the evening, which is the more important part for this forum, is to have a dialogue and a discussion with the community to get their feedback and answer any questions that you guys may have about this bond. So that's pretty much all we're trying to achieve tonight. I think it'll be pretty good. I'm looking forward to it. We already got some questions mailed in, so we'll address those probably first, and then you'll have an opportunity to use the chat feature to ask some more questions. So with that, before we really get started, I just want to introduce it to everybody who our panel is. We have a bunch of panelists here helping out tonight, a lot of key players in all of this. So I mentioned before, Russ Davidson from KG&D Architects is here to present and facilitate the conversation. Obviously, Dr. Goodman, the superintendent, is here. Laura Banky, the other trustee who served on the facilities committee, is also the vice president of the board, is here as well. And our district clerk, Robin Dunn, is here. Our administrators, Dr. Linehan is here. Chris Keogh is here as well. And Mr. Marash, Mr. Kilgallen is here. And Faith Sparks is also joining us as well. I think that's everybody, right, on the panel? Yeah, great. That's an all-star panel. So we got a lot of good brains here to help with this discussion. So with that, I thought that I would just quickly make a couple of just fast remarks from my perspective, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Davidson. So, in 2018, this community supported our last capital improvement bond project, which we were very grateful for the community for supporting that. It was really critically needed work, and that it was just very, very much needed, particularly with adding more space to the Cottle Elementary School. That project, as everyone knows, got us 9,973 square feet of additional instructional space with a second floor addition, added 7 classrooms, a big STEAM space as well, new security vestibule for Cottle Elementary, as well as the middle school, high school, a brand new athletic field for our middle school, high school, new turf and field, and a bunch of infrastructure that was very much needed. That project broke ground in the summer of 2019. It was completed right at the beginning of this school year. So it came in on budget, it came in on time. So now we're hoping to build upon that success, hopefully that earned trust that we have from the community to keep that momentum going and tackle some more really, really important infrastructure and facilities projects that we really think are needed. We want to keep elevating the quality of our district. We want to keep investing in our community, and we want to, most importantly, ensure that our kids have everything they need to be successful in their education and have a great experience in school. So that's what we're hoping to achieve today. And just a quick little recap of how we got here. We did, this discussion really started on the heels of the last capital project with regards to the Cottle Field. For those you may remember, and there's a question about this, so we'll get to it in more detail later, but the first bond was also to include I wouldn't say an upgrade, but a restoration of the original Cottle playing field. As the bond project got underway, and as we got more feedback from the community, and more importantly, when we obtained ownership of Siwano Boulevard, we started to have some more discussions about what we can do more in terms of that field, and how we can maybe do a bigger scope project or a better improvement than what was originally talked about. So we formed a facilities committee last year before COVID, and we started that discussion. That discussion quickly turned into the idea of doing more, doing another bond, a larger bond, to do some of the things that we didn't get on that first bond that we thought was also very, very important. So that discussion started with our facilities committee, and then COVID hit, and things kind of came to a screeching halt. We didn't really talk about it much for a while. I think understandably so. We didn't really know how COVID was going to impact us financially. So then once the sort of dust settled on that and we started to get a little bit of a handle on it, we reconvened our facilities committee and tried to pick up from where we left off. So we had some more discussions. KG&D also went out and did a reassessment. They had already done a lot of the assessment already from our first bond of what the other needs were in our district that we hadn't addressed in the first bond. So a lot of that work was already done. They went and did an updated version of that, came back to the facilities committee, and we had a pretty large scope of things, a wish list of what we could do and what we'd like to do. And then we started to talk about what we should do. And we kind of came to a conclusion that trying to stay under $10 million was a financially responsible thing to do at this point. So that's kind of framed the discussion. So what we did then was trying to prioritize all of those items that we identified and KG&D identified, and see what we can do within that frame. And what you're going to see tonight is the result of that. We also got input from all of our administrators as well, and it was an ongoing discussion for quite a few months, and got us. So this is not obviously everything the district needs. What you're going to hear tonight is obviously more. You can always do more, but it's our attempt at prioritizing what we think is most important and what's most fiscally responsible. So that's how we ended up where we were today. And of course, we got the full board support of this as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Russ Davidson for his presentation. Russ, you got the floor.
Thank you, Peter. That was a nice introduction. So I'm going to share my screen, which I think I know how to do after a year of COVID. Can everybody see that?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, great. So as Peter said, this is a brief presentation on the prioritized capital project proposal with a vote date of May 18th. There's work at both the middle school and high school, a little more focused on the middle school and high school this time around. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but this is the real summary. We're talking about improvements to common spaces in both Cottle Elementary and the middle high school, which is important because every student K through 12 goes through these spaces. So this will impact the life of every student in the district. As already mentioned, we're talking about reconfigurations and upgrades to the Cottle Elementary playfield and playground. This will provide increased usability for just the Cottle students, but it can also be used as an athletic practice field and by the community. We're going to continue with more security upgrades at the middle school and high school. And an important new element that was impacted by COVID is to really address the older areas of both Cottle Elementary and the middle high school to provide fresh, filtered air in accordance with current codes and air conditioning. So this will make the buildings much healthier and update the ventilation systems in the older parts of the building. There's also some important masonry restoration or historic preservation of the exterior of the middle school, high school, which is a landmark structure. And then some fire alarm system improvements to both buildings. Again, a prioritized life safety issue. So at Cottle, the renovations include the cafeteria renovation and expansion, upgrades to two of the oldest toilet rooms, the playground, and the Siwanoy Boulevard. So here you're looking at the cafeteria, which was actually originally a multi-purpose room that it was also the original gymnasium to the building. So you can see it does not have a lot of windows, and it's sort of a hard institutional looking room. The proposed improvements to the playing field include expanding it in two ways. One is by moving the playground, which is this black rectangle here, is where it is now, is going to be moved up the hill onto what's commonly known as the rock lot, and regrading of the entire multi-purpose field. So, and placement of synthetic turf surrounded by a walking track. Then there's going to be a painted sort of rubberized surface put on Siwanoy Boulevard. It's already being used and closed in the daytime. So this will allow students to flow safely from Cottle Elementary to the playfield. And the space of the street itself will be used as a playground during the daytime when there's no traffic on it. So this is not a new regulation athletic field, but it is usable for practice. It is about a half of a football field and a half soccer field. And you will have striping for both softball and Little League. So it really will have many different uses. And again, synthetic turf, like the high school, it'll be usable after a rain and usable throughout most of the winter. So the existing cafeteria Cottle we already mentioned looks like this. You can see very few windows, some very hard surfaces, institutional with a sort of built-in tables and sort of drab finishes from the 1950s when it was first constructed. And this is the proposed update to it, which bumps out the wall towards Siwanoy Boulevard about 7 feet, adds some windows, and just brightens and really updates the space. So it's going to have increased capacity and be updated as a multi-purpose room. The outside of the cafeteria looks like this, just with the 2 doors, and the proposed exterior when it's bumped out will look like this with the sort of white frame and the blue color, very similar to the 2nd-story addition that just was completed on for instructional space. And then as you go around, this is where the bollards close off the street. You can see the sloping rock lot and the grass field. It will look something like this. So you can see the field is expanded in area. The parking lot has moved up the hill, and Siwanoy is really being treated more as a play area than a street. And then from out in the field, looking back towards Cottle, you can see how poor condition the grass field is. It's so heavily used that natural turf really doesn't have a chance to survive there. And this is the proposed improvements with the synthetic turf field and the new view of the cafeteria. So this is something that's a little bit new, but this is actually a little video, which we hope will work. So we're walking into the new cafeteria. You can see it's a lot lighter and brighter. Has a new furniture, some acoustic treatments on the wall. And I think that just adding the light and the 7 or 8 feet of space makes it feel a lot different. Then we're going to go outside and you'll be able to get a view of the field. And you can see how easy it'll be for students to transfer from lunchtime to playtime with the 2 doors on either end. Of course, they will be locked during the day, and the new secure entrance will be used for visitors. And then up to the rock lot, it converts from a walkthrough to a flyover. You can see how the field fits in there nicely, the walking track, the nice level multi-purpose surface. And you can see the new cafeteria extension, the new security vestibule. And then we come back down towards the cafeteria. So in addition to the renovations, there's a lot of important infrastructure items at the Cottle Elementary that'll be included, including replacing corridor ceilings and updating lighting, updating the balance, the fire alarm system, so a little bit of asbestos abatement above the corridor ceilings. And then what's really important is going to impact the health of a lot of students is the older classrooms will have a new outside air system with energy recovery, a MERV 13 filtration, so that you're going to get 100% outside air in those older classrooms that to this time rely on a minimal ventilation system and each room will have what's called a variable refrigeration flow unit, so individual controls for air conditioning for each room. So at the middle school, high school, there's a little more focus on this building during this bond. We're talking about improvements to the library and the cafeteria, air conditioning the new wing, and again, the older classrooms will have the 100% outside air systems with individual controlled air conditioning. So this is a proposed rendering for the library. You've done a little bit of sort of work there with the carpet, but this will really make it into a next generation learning commons, a lot more space for students to work collaboratively, and a little bit less space for storage of books. And on the lower level, you'll see some before pictures on the upper left of the cafeteria and the proposed renovation of the cafeteria on the bottom right. So really improving this space and the serving area. And, you know, it's important to know that both the cafeteria and library are used by students during the full day, not just during one period of the day. There also will be a better connection between the two. Right now, the gymnasium lobby is an unused space and it connects both the library and cafeteria. So we're going to reactivate that connection and renovate this space as well so that both the outdoor plaza and the interim lobby can be used by students during the day. Some important infrastructure items are also included at the high school: a new accessible handicap ramp at the main entrance, and some stone and masonry repairs to the facades, hardware and security upgrades to exterior and interior doors, some stairs and railing, the gym flooring, emergency lighting and fire alarm, and the mechanical ventilation work that we already talked about. So this is a breakdown of the costs. It's a $9.9 million proposal, 5.4 at the high school and 4.5 at Cottle Elementary. All project elements should fully qualify for state building aid. And, you know, right now, interest rates and construction pricing are better than in prior years. And the schedule is to expedite the playing field work at Cottle so it can be completed as soon as possible, and all work to be completed by the start of the school year in 2023. So I think that's our presentation, Peter, and I think I thought Lee had some financial information as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Davidson. Excellent job, and video is awesome. Great presentation. Thank you. Yeah,
Yes,
so you're right. Next up is our Assistant Superintendent for Business, Ms. Lee Lu, to talk about some finances.
Okay, I'm working on trying to share my screen. Oh, I see. Okay. And the controls are in the way for me to make it a full screen. I'm just working on that for a second. I'm not quite sure what happened. Maybe Chris Keogh, possibly. You can help me.
Sure. You clicked from beginning. I don't know if it's loading right now.
Okay.
Let me see.
Try that again.
What are you having problems with?
I'm trying to share the screen and unfortunately it's not working. Is that it?
Oh, yep, you got it.
Okay. All right, great. So the proposed payment for the capital project, we'll go through that quickly. And my next problem is, oh, here we go.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The financial statistics briefly are that there are 1,252 single-family homes in the Tuckahoe District, as well as commercial properties. The total assessed value of all Tuckahoe taxable property in the district is a little over $18 million, with the median typical assessed value in the district of $8,300. There are, for the 2020-21 tax rate is $1,595.98 per $1,000 of assessed value. So a typical median home in the district has an average tax bill of $13,000. Financially, Tuckahoe has an excellent credit rating. It's remained AA3, and it was recently reviewed again by Moody's Investor Service. And as Russ Davidson said, interest rates are at historical lows. We pay for capital projects, large-scale projects, through an annual bond. That is the way districts tend to fund projects. It's impossible to put the cost of a large project like this in a general budget. We fund that with voter approval. It maximizes our New York State building aid that way. And school districts may only borrow up to the amount of funds that are authorized by the voter referendum. So for a proposed bond cost of $9.9 million, the annual cost for the debt, because we have some funds in our cafeteria fund and some leftover grant funds that we can use toward the bond, we would borrow $9.755 million, we estimate, with an annual debt service cost of $728,000. The district receives about 24% building aid, and so that would be the estimated building aid annually on the project, with a net cost of $581,700 in debt service to the district. And so what we have determined is the average cost for the typical median Tuckahoe home with an average assessed value of $8,300 would be $266 a year. This bar graph shows what the cost to the taxpayer would be. The blue bars in the left side of the graph, starting with this current year, show what we currently pay in debt service. We add to that the red section on top of the blue, which is our current project that we have just started to pay back the debt for that project. And then the green bars on the very top, starting in approximately 2023-24, would be the new debt service for the bond that we're proposing. And as you can see, for about 5 years, when the three bars are there together from 2023-4 till 2027-28, that is the point where we have slightly more debt service than the other years, but then it quickly drops off by 28-29. The combined cost of the debt service is below what we're currently paying now. And then again, next steps would be after the presentations that we're doing, we will have the referendum on the bond in conjunction with the annual budget vote on May 18th. And then if the bond is approved by the community, preparation of detailed plan and design and scope by the architect, as well as administration and community input. There would be a submittal to NYSED, SED, State Education Department, for review and approval. Once approved, we can begin construction.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Liu. Appreciate it. Before we jump into the questions and the comments, there was one important thing that I left off my opening comments. I meant to thank personally the members of our facility committee, which were critical to all of this. They were members of our community largely that provided a lot of good input on this project. And so the facilities committee was myself, Laura Banky, and Lee Liu as well. And then from the community, we had Mr. Rob Seifer, Tom Manginelli, Bill Carney, Ray Ianello. And last year, we also had Frank Melito, who was also helping us out as well. And once again, those community members were great to work with, provided some really, really good input, really gave us a good pulse of what's going on in the community. And also a lot of those gentlemen are involved in related fields in their professional work, and were able to provide some really good input and some really good insight. So thank you very much to them. And again, like I said earlier, they were instrumental to us figuring out the right scope of this project and what was really needed. So All right, Mr. Key, I'll turn it over to you. How do you want to handle, should we tackle the mail-in questions first? And do you want to read those? How do you want to handle that?
Sure, we can start with the questions we received by mail. The first question we received was about the art room at Cottle. It reads, could you please explain when and how the art room will be restored and if the funds for that are already allocated?
All right, I'll turn that one over to Mr. Marash. Mr. Marash, would you mind answering that?
Sure, no problem. So the art room was not built into the new construction, but we did get our full art studio back as a result of the completion of the new construction. So the art studio became a full classroom. And now that we have the space to expand, which we very much needed, now the art room can become the art room again next year. It was slated to be that this year, but then of course the pandemic hit and we had to turn it back into a classroom. But next year, hopefully we are on the right trajectory and we can reunify our classrooms, which we've already started to do this year. So next year we will have our art studio back on the first floor. And we actually took a step in that direction last summer by knocking down one of the temporary walls that was put up a number of years ago. So the art studio will be back fully functioning and expanded next year, which we're very excited for.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah, I know as a board member, when we originally were planning the first project, that was one of the goals, was to get the library and the art room back with the added classroom spaces. So yeah, obviously that was the intention all along. So the added classrooms should get us that back, like you said. Thank you.
A similar question came in about the library at Cottle. Does this proposal include any provisions for improving or reopening the library at Cottle?
Can I take that one?
Yeah, yes, please do.
Okay,
Thank you,
please.
Peter. So while the library is not part of this bond, our library was expanded last summer during the construction. And we started with taking down that wall a number of years ago. We needed space for a computer lab. So we took part of the library, put up a temporary wall. We had a small computer lab there. With the creation of our innovation lab on the new second floor, which is amazing, we're going to no longer need that space. So we're planning on renovating our library with some new furniture, keeping in mind that we're looking to make it look more like a maker space with some new furniture this summer.
Great, thank you.
And there was also a question about the gymnasium at Cottle, wondering why it was not part of the improvement plan in this project.
Yeah, so this could be a team effort if anybody wants to jump in, but I'll start that off. We certainly discussed that in the facilities committee briefly, and ultimately I would say there's two main reasons why we didn't include it. One was, like I said in my opening comments, we were trying to be fiscally responsible and, understanding that this pandemic probably has hit some in the community kind of hard. We were trying to be, measured essentially in this bond. And to do the Cottle Gymnasium right in terms of expanding it and completely renovating it with the way that we spoke about in the first bond is a pretty pricey project. I forget the number. I think it's somewhere around 10 million, maybe 8 million or so. So it would have essentially doubled probably the size of this bond. And also in talking with our administrators, Mr. Marash, Mr. Kogallen, and others, while I think we all agree that gymnasium it could use an upgrade and can use improvements, it is adequately serving our needs right now. And then also with the proposal to do the field the way we're doing it now with the turf, it provides year-round use, so that takes pressure off of the need of that gymnasium, because now PE instruction and things of that nature can be taken outside, weather permitting, year-round. And then the other piece of it was also just being mindful of how large of a project that would be and how disruptive it would be to the school, and realizing we just went through a very disruptive project. The last project, adding the second floor, was a very major project and was, it's difficult to deal with a project like that while you're trying to do instruction and do school. And just recovering from that, we didn't feel it was the right time to put the elementary school through that type of construction again. We just felt overall with all the input that this was not the time. It didn't really need to be done right now, but we definitely recognize that it is a need in the future. And it is probably I would say it's the next item up for Cottle. And I think the question also asked about when it will be done. And, I don't have the answers to that. I would suggest that if you look at that chart that Ms. Lou showed with the debt sort of timeline, 2028, a lot of debt comes off and our debt service goes down dramatically. Now, we don't have to necessarily wait to 2028 because usually when you do a capital project, you have about a year or two before you actually start paying the bills on that. So I would say maybe 2026 would be a time to think about a project like that. So that would have given us quite a bit of time between this last one and put us on a trajectory to do that project at a time when debt's coming off. But again, that's just my opinion. Obviously, that would have to be a community discussion and a facilities discussion. But that's sort of my take on that. Anybody else? Laura, do you have any input on that, or anybody have any input on that?
Yeah, I was just your last point was what I was going to make also, Pete, is that many districts. I think one of the things that we kind of fell into as a district that before my time was we waited a long time to sort of invest money back into the buildings, into the facilities. So, and then when the first bond didn't go through, so we're sort of catching up. And I think the point is that all these things are important. And in fact, when Russ presented his sort of analysis of infrastructure as well as what our needs were, I think it was 20 million, or it was double, if not more. So we sort of, again, it's taking what we feel the kids will benefit from right now and is most needed. But I agree that will definitely be on the list. And I think as the debt comes off, it makes sense just to keep these sort of improvements going, hopefully.
Yeah. Mr. Marash or Mr. Kilgallen, can you speak to the current gym and obviously we know it could be upgraded, but in terms of its ability to serve our needs now, can you speak to that?
Yeah. So, Mr. Casson, all I can do is support what you had said before. Obviously, we've expanded the building, which we very much needed. We're looking to expand the cafeteria, which is a need right now. But to date, even with all of that expansion, the gymnasium itself has never ceased to meet the needs of our physical education classes or any events or assemblies, things like that we might have in addition to that during school or after the school day or before school care, anything like that. So we've never had an issue with the capacity of the gymnasium.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
We received a question about the 2018 bond. I thought, and the question reads, I thought the previous referendum in 2018 was supposed to fund improvements to the fields in Cottle and that plan was to be completed by now. What happened to that plan?
So I touched upon that a little bit, I think, in my opening, but Ms. Lou, do you want to take a crack at that? And then I'll jump in if I need to.
Sure. So at the time, we had planned to do a smaller renovation to the Cottle Field, and we had bid that project out as a standalone project. But we put that project on hold for several reasons. One, we had we received the Siwanoy Boulevard, and so we started to rethink whether what we had planned made the most sense. And in addition to all the other construction we were doing at the time, and we decided to hold off on doing that Cottle Field till we made a better determination. So we did not spend the money on that part of the project, and we won't bond for that amount of money. That will what will turn out is that our bond will be lowered by approximately the amount of the field itself, and then that lower debt service can be applied toward the next project.
Right. Yeah. So essentially, you're correct. Whoever answered that question, it was in the original scope, but as we talked about a few times tonight, it was decided that we wanted to do more there. So essentially, we're not borrowing that money, like Ms. Lou said. So the first project is costing us that much less, and then we are bonding it over on this project. So essentially, shifting that project over to this bond so we can do it at a larger scale and a larger scope. And as you can see from Mr. Davidson's video, it's going to be much better and much nicer than we originally we're looking to do.
We also received a question about the windows and glass in the proposed cafeteria at Cottle. Question about whether or not there might be another material or design to reduce the amount of visibility from the outside street, and questions about whether or not we've considered alternatives to regular window glass.
Yeah, I understand there's maybe some concern about the amount of open windows there. So, you know, I don't like to have too many discussions about security in a public forum. But to say that, what I will say, and others can jump in on this as well, maybe Russ has something to say about it as well. But you know, this is the way I look at it, having now been through this process before. I'm kind of a veteran now, somewhat. This phase of the bond proposal is just that. It's a proposal. Its concept is it's in its scope. We haven't gotten granular into details in terms of design, and security is something we're always thinking about as well. And yeah, I think there's some discussion to be had on that. When I think the general scope and general design would probably stay the same, but how we sort of get down to the details of that, I think is still open for discussion, obviously. And I think the project writ large, assuming that we get support from the community and it's passed, when we get into that design phase, I would like to bring our security committee into the discussion on all these projects. And we also have a security consultant. So that will be discussed, and where modifications need to be made in order to make things a little bit tighter in terms of security, we're certainly going to do that, or certainly discuss doing that. So I don't think folks should look at this as sort of being the final design. This is really more conceptual, and then we could get down to the granular details as we get into the design phase. Mr. Davidson, do you have anything to add to that? Was that pretty accurate?
You covered it pretty well there, Peter. It is a concept, and I think there are some alternatives that definitely we will look at in more detail when we get to the design phases.
Yep, perfect.
And similar to that vein, the question was also about the glass in the room making the room very hot. Were there plans for air conditioning in the cafeteria space?
Russ,
Yeah, that is part of the scope of the renovation. So yes. And I would also say that south-facing glass with the right coatings on it, we can prevent a lot of the heat gain that you would get through traditional glass. But also a good point, and something we'll work on during the design phases.
We received a question. What are the risks and benefits of waiting a year or two on this project?
What are the risks and benefits of waiting a year or two on this project? Not sure if I understand the question. Waiting, I guess maybe I don't understand if they're saying wait a year for the proposal, or wait a year to start the project. That person maybe can clarify that, because I'm not sure.
It was a mail-in question.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if the person's on the call.
Spoke to it. He said that the interest rates and the building rates are very good right now, so this is a good time. We got some favorable news in our state and federal aid, so this is a good time to do it. And we don't know what interest rates will be 2 years from now, or building construction projects, but right now it's very favorable in our favor if we do this now, get started now.
I would also add, Amy, that you've got some real health and safety improvements, fire alarm, security, and clean, fresh, ventilated air. So the sooner the better for the health of everybody who uses the building, especially the students.
And especially since the pandemic, we did keep windows open, which made us very safe, but this will give us lots of other alternatives to have clean, fresh air recirculating and higher air filters.
All excellent points. And I would also add, what we as board members have gotten back from the community as well, is that there's really a real sense of urgency to get that Cottle Field in order. It's really important to the community. It's really it's important to our kids, obviously, and it's also important to our rec leagues and things of that nature. So, I would add that to it as well, as just getting that project done, because it needs to be done.
Yeah, Mr. Casson, I can just also add curriculum and instruction wise, to see the help and phys ed teachers out there this year. They did an amazing job, and Mr. Marash and Mr. Cowan will attest to that, in just adapting to what we don't have. I mean, and with this field and the walk around area. They're going to be able to do so much more instructionally. It's going to be incredible. So I can just say, to the committee and the public, we appreciate that. It's going to give it a whole new, not just a look, but the usage for the instructional piece is going to be incredible for health and physical education. So thank you all, in advance. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Tobin. Thank you.
Question we received in the chat. Will any parking on the far side of the Cottle Field be retained?
Dr. Goodman, you want to take that? You're
Dr.
muted.
Goodman, you're on mute.
You're muted.
Russ, I think that Russ should take it because he had.
Yeah, no, that parking was put in during construction because we needed a staging area, and so no, there will not be any parking on the field. We're taking the full area to make it usable by the students and the community for athletics and recreation.
A comment we received says sold, and also encourages us to make sure we get the word out to incoming kindergarten families. A question about the timeline. Curious about how the construction of the exterior space will affect outside time for kids when the project is underway.
Mr. Marash, you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, I would sort of defer to Russ Davidson on a prediction of the timeline. I do believe that, and Mr. Davidson, I'm going to hand it over to you, but I do believe that Cottle Field is sort of the top priority. So I'm sure that will be started and done so in a timely manner. But I'm going to hand it over to you, and then I can speak to how creative we can certainly get, depending on where we're at with the construction project. But Russ, why don't you take it?
Sure, John. Well, the great thing is that you now have Siwanoy Boulevard. So we can fence off the field and the playground, and you'll still have that outdoor space available to the students throughout the construction period. So, and also one of the first things that needs to happen is changing the rock lot into the playground. So it's anticipated that the new playground will come online first and the field second, but you'll always have Siwanoy Boulevard throughout the construction, no matter what time of year it happens.
Yeah,
Right.
what I'll add to that is that, Mr. Kilgallen and I, Anthony Russo, of course, Dr. Goodman, Mr. Keogh, we have thought very creatively this year, and we have found spaces to use that, we never thought of. So that's one positive that we can take out of the situation this year. Spaces behind the building, we cleared out and made for, recess areas for the kids or areas for extended mass breaks. We'll always have Siwanoy Boulevard. Again, areas behind the building. And as soon as the playground becomes accessible, we will use that. But we will definitely make sure the kids can get out and play and get fresh air and do it safely.
But John, real quick, just to piggyback on your comments, it's kind of, we've lived through this already in a sense when Cottle Field was used as a staging area for the construction site.
Good point, Mr.
So Cottle, so we've already lived through this once before. So, we'll pretty much just put all the measures that we put in place when the construction equipment was used, when Cottle Field was used as a staging area for all the equipment and the trailers and whatnot. So we've kind of lived through this already. So, we'll be prepared to deal with all the challenges and surprises that come our way once that project gets underway.
And a big part of that was our communication and partnership, of course, with Dr. Lenahan, Mr. Tobin, Mr. DeBellis, sending our PE classes up to use the high school turf at times, to use the turf for recess. So we coordinated our schedules so we can get creative with our scheduling and with our space.
Right, so if I could say a couple of things is that, first of all, this year is a testament to all of you, and we've used every bit of space and even the outside space, which we used a lot. Again, the high school field was used by Cottle. Additionally, I believe we spoke about if we could, not promising, but we would like to start the Cottle project soon if the vote went through. There was some talk about even possibly in the summer, and that would be certainly the best time for us to get started. So I think we were extremely cognizant even last year, was that the year before, when I first started, when we did work around student schedules, and we try our best there. But I have complete faith in the Cottle administration to be very creative around this. And I think it is. Again, I want to say something about Cottle Field. Our schools are looking so great, and we are leading the way in so many ways. And just having this as the thing that you see when you drive up to our school district will be, just bring us into the modern age. Very exciting.
I'd just like to make a point about the conversion to synthetic turf. When it was done at the middle school, high school, the utilization rate increase was dramatic. It was very significant, 20 to 40%, muddy days, rainy days, recess lunch, games. And so it wasn't slight at all. So the value to the community is utilization is tremendous.
That's a really good input. Yeah, it's a really good point. Thank you. And to Dr. Goodman's point too, if the one thing that we know our administration has proven is adaptability over the last year. I mean, you certainly have shown that you could do that. This is actually a good segue. Maybe Russ, if you could just give a little bit of an overview of what the expected timeline would be. I know you mentioned the last board meeting, but could you just give us? I know some things are subject to change, but what's your best guess at a timeline? I know the field will look and maybe get going sooner on, and then the rest of the project. What would be your best guess?
Well, it is a guess. Thank you, because we do have to, as Lee mentioned, go to the state for permitting, and they are very unpredictable, frankly. But it takes time to prepare the detailed plans. You vote in May. We could be to the state sometime in the fall, and that, with an expedited review for the playing field, we might be able to start some of the playing field over winter 21, 22. And, you might really be able to start by fall of 2022 with new playground and field outside of Cottle, which is pretty fast after a bond.
Right.
And, that's a little optimistic, but it's not a lot of complicated work. And there's a lot of contractors who are qualified to do it.
And then the other work would, if everything went according to plan, would likely start summer.
Summer 22, and
22.
we would think that some of it would carry over into summer 23, because we want to try and confine the work to the summers and learn from what we happened to Cottle, which is to not disrupt students with construction work.
Right, and I would imagine one of the first things that you tackle in the summer of 22 would be the extension of the Cottle cafeteria. Do you think that would be actually, usable, the cafeteria? Assuming we started in the summer of 22, would that cafeteria be usable sometime in that year, that school year, or early on in that school year?
So, well, I'm not sure exactly how early,
Right.
but the messy, noisy work would be summer of 22. And
Right.
then the interior finishing probably would extend through the fall of 22. But again, with outside doors, that work can be done without disrupting students, and they can be doing painting and installing light fixtures while things happen in Cottle.
Great, thank you. Mr. Keo, you have another question?
We do. There's a question for Ms. Liu, asking if you could help explain how state aid works and when the community would see the $266 increase in their taxes.
So typically, after the community votes on a bond, if the bond is approved, as Russ Davidson was saying, there's about a 1-year process for design, submission to state ed, and then once that's state ed approves it, we have to go to bid for our contractors and all the startup time that's entailing. So we wouldn't actually even begin construction probably for at least a year. We would do some short-term borrowing, which would not be as high as that $266 figure. So realistically, we would not be looking at that number until at least the 23-24 school year, when we start to pay back the full cost of the project. It could possibly even be 1 year later than that. State aid is right now a formula devised by the state, and for Tuckahoe, the state aid is about 24%, and that's dependent upon voter approval. So any voter approved project right now for Tuckahoe gets about 24% state aid. That state aid is based on the aidable parts of the project, which, as Russ said, it looks like it's all generally aidable. And that would be paid out over what the state determines the lifespan of the project is. So on a renovation, I believe that's over 15 years. And we would just try to time the debt service to match up with the state aid payments to make the best impact for the taxpayer.
Great, thank
And
you.
another question, Ms. Liu, can some of the state and federal aid be used to pay for these projects? I think they're referring to the state aid that we're getting this year. If so, can that lower the cost to taxpayers?
At this point in time, and maybe Faith Sparks can help me with that answer, we're still looking into what is permissible to be used by the federal grants. I don't believe that money can be used toward this project, but we'll certainly take a look and see if that's possible. Faith, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's right. We're still waiting on information and guidance.
We received some questions about the field. One about fencing. If there'll be fencing around Cottle Field to protect it, will it be locked when school is not in session? How can we protect it from misuse, like electric bikes and dogs?
Well, I can't speak to the when it'll be open or closed, but I'm sure some sort of low fence is warranted to protect the turf and to keep balls on the field and out of the traffic. But I don't think you really want it to be a tall security fence. But that's something we'll talk about in design. I'm sure we'll arrive at a reasonable middle ground there.
Yeah, and as far as, access after hours, that field traditionally has been open to the public. And I know that the idea of the walking track was also, I think we were thinking, is also something that could be used by the community as well. I do think that this came up in an earlier board meeting. I do think that probably soon the board and the facilities committee probably needs to talk about revisiting policy on public use of our fields. I think there's very varying opinions on that, even talking about the high school, middle school, which currently we keep locked, after hours and is not usable to the general public. I think there's opinions on both sides of whether or not that's something we should sustain or rethink. And then obviously the conversation about the Cottle Field could be part of that. So I think it's a discussion for another day. I'm not trying to divert it, but I do think it warrants some more thought and some more input, and it's kind of a separate discussion. I personally think it did come up earlier in an earlier board meeting, and I think it's something for us to bring to the facilities committee, maybe the security committee, get some input from the community, take the pulse, and see. But as of right now, if we were to maintain our current policy with the fields, that field would still be open to the public. So we could revisit that and talk about that another time. Lori, you have anything to add on that? Am I correct about that? Good. Okay.
Yep. A question also, will there be spectator benches, places for students to sit, and shaded areas in the new Cottle Field?
Again, I think it's an excellent idea. There will be still a slope between the rock lot and the playing field, where we could easily incorporate some on-grade or elevated seating and a fabric shade structure, which could benefit both the playground and spectators at some point. But it's not fully designed, and we look forward to working that out with the committee.
We received a comment. I'll read it. This is a fiscally responsible, beautifully and thoughtfully developed proposal that will ultimately improve and optimize the health, cognitive, creative, and social emotional well-being of our students. It's a no-brainer. Thank you all. The administration in Tuckahoe, teachers and board are fabulous. Other questions include, will all classrooms have MERV 13 filtration?
Well, not every classroom is being addressed in this bond. A lot of your classrooms do have adequate ventilation, and I'm not aware of exactly what filtration they have, but everything that we're doing new in this bond will have MERV 13 filtration.
And lastly, specific to the middle school, high school, does this bond cover all the exterior physical issues we can see and don't see? Since it's an old building that needs operation and ongoing maintenance. The flagpole near the teacher parking lot is an example, and other interior gardens and grassy areas.
Rush, you want to try that one first? And
Sure, right. Most of the work at the high school is really masonry work. So again, although I'm curious about the flagpole, and we'll take a look at that, but we did a careful examination of the exterior of your building, and what is prioritized at this point, because as Peter said, you can continue to do things, is making sure the masonry is in good shape and doesn't get any worse, because you've got a beautiful Art Deco building, and we want it to stay that way.
yeah, that is a big part of this project too. I think Russ said it before, but it's not as sort of, obvious. Doesn't play as well on a moving video, but infrastructure is a big part of this project. Critical infrastructure to the school is a big part of it. And what we can't fit into this bond, if those of you have been following along with the budget discussion, we did pull over 200,000. We are suggesting to pull over 200,000 into our capital improvement fund. So some of that money could be used as well for some odds and ends of infrastructure that we don't get in this bond. But I think the idea is to address all those high priority infrastructure issues with this bond.
Right, and I want to say too that a lot of the money, a lot of this bond goes to the masonry restoration. It is a beautiful historic building, and it's very important to Tuckahoe to keep it like that. Again, there are and have been a lot of infrastructure issues at the middle school, high school, because it is an old building. What Pete said about the budget is really important, this transfer of money, so that we can use when we have, emergency or important things to do that aren't covered by the bond. And even the question on, in case we can use some of the money that is coming in from federal aid to this bond, we have plenty of infrastructure to do in the middle school, high school. So we won't get to everything, but we get to a lot of the important things in this bond. So thank you for all those questions.
There's a question for Dr. Linehan, if you could speak to current crowding issues in the cafeteria, so the community can understand.
Yeah, I'm glad to get this question. I was going to speak up anyway. Just regarding the cafeteria and the library, I mean, the district has been very proud of the innovation and technology. We've been a leader in Westchester. One-to-one Chromebooks, we were the first. Dr. Goodman has just continued to move us forward. And when you go through the building, you see, how advanced we are. And then when you get to the library, suddenly you're back in the 20th century. So we really want to make the library part of our total academic program and convert it into a space where kids can use the innovation and use the technology and use the new experience of instruction and learning that is available throughout the rest of the building. The cafeteria, I'm going to speak on behalf of the nearly 600 students in the building and the thousands more to come. They are looking so much forward to improvements in the cafeteria. When you go in there now, as I said, it's very 20th century. It's not really a friendly place where you want to go. We're talking social emotional now, to relax, to enjoy some company with your friends. And also the functionality of it it's old school. I'm not an expert on food disposal and food distribution, but basically it's been long overdue. My first week on the job many years ago, I'm not going to tell anybody how long, that was an issue and basically has not gone away. So it's much needed. And the other part is the front lobby Mr. Davidson alluded to. That is a beautiful lobby. That was the entrance to the gymnasium, which was the library, which is the current library. So the current library was the gymnasium. It's a beautiful lobby that really is underutilized, used for storage. So the whole aspect of that part of the building can really be utilized much more effectively, both instructionally, aesthetically, and social emotionally.
And just to answer that question a little further, that was a great answer, Dr. Linehan, thank you. But in terms of the crowding of the current cafeteria in the middle school, high school, because of that vestibule that's going to be part and kind of connect the cafeteria to the library, in many school districts, kids move when they have these really inviting libraries that they use that during lunchtime. Like, kids eat their lunch and then they can go right to the library, and that could be a very inviting space for them to talk quietly to each other, read books in comfortable chairs. Those type of things happen in other school districts that have very modern, inviting libraries. Additionally, with the library and cafeteria, because they're going to be modernized, they can be used for project-based learning spaces. And additionally, back to the cafeteria, it's going to be reorganized, so there'll be different server spaces and have a much better flow also.
Yeah, my
that
understanding.
Will be a connection from the cafeteria to the library, to Dr. Goodman's point.
Yeah, and another really important point Dr. Goodman made, I think, is also, although we're not adding real square footage to that cafeteria because we just can't, but you mentioned the reorganization of it and the modernization of it. My understanding is that by putting a modern kitchen in there, a modern food service kitchen, we will gain space for the kids. It'll have a smaller footprint than it does now, which then can be repurposed for the students. I'm correct on that, right? Right, Russ? Is that right?
Yeah, it's really the serving area that is going to be redone, so it takes up less footprint. So there'll be more seating area and more variety of types of seating areas, which we've had a lot of success with in other school districts throughout the community. As you know, it's not always 6 students at a table. Some students want to sit by themselves quickly and go off and study. So we're going to provide all those options and the better connection that Bart and Amy spoke about.
And the library will free up space in the cafeteria.
Right, good point. Yeah.
I'm sorry, my audio is not great. But Russ, you also mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, are we doing anything with the outdoor space where you talked about that space we don't use now, right, which was the old entrance to the gym? What about the area right outside of that? Was there anything in the plans to do anything there? So the kids.
Well, basically, it's just going to make it accessible and put some benches out there. But it's a really nice outdoor space. And, high school students usually do go outdoors all the time. So, obviously there's some security concerns and you got to keep an eye on that. But that nice space in front of, it's about 30 feet by 30 feet. So all different times of the year, that'll be a great space. It'll be accessible to the library and cafeteria. And, we're actually working right now on another video. So within a few days, we'll be able to show the community what that all feels like.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that.
That front courtyard is rarely used, Laura. Your point's well taken. And basically, last year graduation, we had 85 individual graduations. We used it really for the first time officially. And it really is underutilizing, and we can really get a beautiful, beautiful area there.
Yeah, I think that's.
Hey, one last comment about the cafeteria from a financial perspective. I just wanted to bring this point. I know Ms. Liu mentioned it in her numbers overview, but I know in the past we've gotten some questions and even some criticism about the excessive amount of cafeteria fund balance that we have there. So just in case that wasn't caught in Ms. Liu's presentation, this is where we're going to use that money. That money is going to be allocated, at least a portion of it. We're going to keep what we're allowed to keep in for excess of fund, but the excess that we have will be applied to offset the cost of this project, which is what we were been waiting for the last couple of years. So just for those that were concerned about that, that extra monies will be used to offset the cost of the cafeteria renovation.
I just checked the form and also the chat. It looks like we've answered all of the questions.
Right. Awesome. So I'll just say as a follow comment, we mentioned before, assuming the bond is approved, and I hope it is, then that allows KG&D to go into the design phase. And I would just say, keep the suggestions coming. Come to board meetings, speak to us, email us. There's some great suggestions in here tonight about benches and about shaded areas. Keep it coming. We want to hear it. I can't promise you that we'll incorporate everything. Obviously, we'll bring it into consideration to the facilities committee, and then also with Russ and his team. But we want to hear the input. This is not what you saw tonight is not the final design. This is just a concept and a scope. And then assuming we get the support from the community, we get into the nitty gritty, and we want to keep hearing from the community without a doubt. and also from the administration and from our staff as well, obviously. We're going to keep the conversation going and, and keep the input coming for sure.
Very very communicative on the bond, as you can see by this forum that we're having tonight. We'll have another one of those. We're posting to Facebook. Please go on our website. We have all our board meetings that speak about this. If somebody missed this tonight, tell them this will be running on our website so people can look at this. Tell your student, if you have younger families, let them know too. We'll get the word out to them also for families that are not in Cottle yet. We're going to put signage out by the school so people who walk or ride by will also see what we're doing. We are really working on communication. Any ideas that you have, if you can't come to board meetings, feel free to email us. We're very responsive to emails too, and it'll be a process. This is the scope that we have right now, but it could, we have some latitude to make some changes as we go along with this. So it's an outline of most of what we want to do, but we certainly want your input. So thank you.
Just to add to that, the question about younger parents and kindergarten parents, to your point, Dr. We're going to have a banner, right, put up, so a pickup line to show what the rendering will look like. So we're going to try to communicate to those who may not, get on the computer or may not be paying attention, but at least they'll see the signage around. So that'll be very helpful too.
Yeah, and then also for those who don't have kids in the school district right now, those newer parents, so those younger parents, there will be a mailer that's going to go out to everybody in the community. That'll have a lot of information. And then we're going to be, I think, stepping up some of our social media efforts as well. A lot of young parents, obviously, on social media. So if you know young parents that don't have kids in the school district yet, encourage them to follow the school district on Facebook and Twitter. They can just start following now, and they'll get some of that information and pass the word as well. And then I know Dr. Goodman already made a presentation to the town. Eastchester Town Board. She's going to do one at Tuckahoe. So we are going to try our best to reach outside of the school community. In terms of, when I say school community, I mean parents that have kids in the school right now. We're going to do our best to try and reach out beyond that. But for those that are on the call and listening, we can use your help on that. Spread the word, let people know, encourage them to follow us on social media. That's a good way to get the word out. Did we get a few more comments and questions, Mr. Keogh, or I think we got like one or two more, looks like.
A question about the Cottle Kindergarten playground, if that will be affected at all by the plans?
I do not believe so.
That's correct.
Yep.
Thank you comment. You're doing amazing things for our kids in our community, and suggestion that we consider creating an FAQ.
Great. Okay. So I think that's it. So does any of our panel have anything extra? You don't have to. You're not forced to say anything more. Everybody had some great contributions. I'm not looking to prolong this longer than we need to. But if anyone on the panel has anything, any alibis or anything that you think should have been added or discussed, please speak up now. All right. I think we're good. All right. So thank you, everyone, for your time. This was recorded, so it will be available to be reviewed. So you can let your neighbors and friends know that if they missed it, they could. It'll be on our website, correct, Dr. Goodman?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have a YouTube channel too, so.
Right. It'll be up on the YouTube channel as well, so you can rewatch it there. And again, thank you very much for all your time and effort. I know everybody's time is valuable. Thank you to our panel for taking the extra time out tonight to do this. And thank you for those that came on and participated. We really, really value your input. We really do. We want to hear from the community. It's a great community. We're really excited about this project. We're really excited in the direction the district is going. We just want to keep it going. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Good night,
you all.
everybody. Thank you.